In this episode of Man vs. Marriage, it's time to talk about sex.
The podcast.
How good do you want your life to be?
It's truly about becoming the best version of yourself that's possible.
This is Man vs. Marriage.
The podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. It is I, the cute dog, up in the house with my lovely wife, Jeannie Moran.
Hello.
And this time, this episode and this series coming up, we are going to talk about sex. Now, quickly, I just want to get this out of the way. Anytime you say the word sex, there is immediately going to be pun after pun after pun that is sexual. That's just my sense of humor. So I want to get that out of the way. And there, I mean, you could say that's what she said, all kinds of stuff. Even I said coming up on this episode, there it is. It all just happens that way. But
So you're going to lay down the rules. Quincy's going to make the immature puns. I'm going to cuss. It is what it is.
yeah, it's all marked E for explicit. But this, I'm telling you, these episodes, Jeannie has put in so much time and effort, and she's going to lead these episodes. I'll be here as a great co-host, but she's put in a lot of time, effort, reading, and I'm excited about what she's going to share. It's going to be our journey, obviously, and what we're learning, how far we've come. That's what she said. And I'm excited for you to get the opportunity to learn from what we have going on, what we have had going on, and our experiences from the past. And maybe we'll even get into what we expect for the future. But sex, for some reason, is like this taboo thing for our lives. I don't know where you've come from. I don't know how you grew up, what your family life was. We're going to tell you about ours. Feel free to email us about yours, coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com, coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com. Let us know if there's anything that we could talk about or cover for your benefit, because that's why we're here. We're here to do this for you. And, you know, it helps us too. We get therapy out of this.
Yeah, this is our
oddly
own
enough.
little therapy session.
It is. It is.
Especially
So-
since these are not scripted. Quincy knows the basics of what we're going to talk about, but we didn't really go into points that we want to prove. It's going to be open talk. So this should be... We don't know what you're going to get any more than you know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Go ahead and tell us why. Let's start out with why this is important. And, I mean, maybe one of the... It's in our whole series of things we have going on, but we just had Dan Purcell on for a great episode talking about intimacy and sex. And this kind of just fell in line with what we were doing. But I asked you to take this task on because I want the guys to learn like almost like a woman's point of view, even though it's not going to be that, but about what your mindset might be. So take it away.
It actually kind of started when we were shopping for my niece for her wedding, because I was explaining to my sister, you know, what I wanted to do. And, you know, we have a tradition in our family. When you have the bridal shower, my particular family gets the joke gifts and the, you know, the games, the lottery tickets, the how to give a good blowjob jokes, that kind of stuff to break the ice. Now, it used to be because they assumed we weren't having sex before we were married. And you and I didn't. We did cross some lines, but we didn't have sex. But there are others.
Very subjective in my opinion.
Well, we'll get into that later. I'm not going there right now. But for her bridal shower, it just seemed like no one else really got into bringing about that side of what's going to be in marriage. I mean, she got wedding gifts for her bridal shower. That's not what a bridal shower is for. Guys go out, they have a good time. You have your last hurrah. Some people do it with strippers. Some people go to clubs. Some guys go out dancing and drinking. Whatever you do, you do. The women, we usually pump up the honeymoon. That's our job. Make you look good, make you feel good, give you some things to break the ice so that you're guaranteed to enjoy your honeymoon. And if you get stuck, you have a go-to, idea. So anyway, when my sister and I went out shopping, it just came out in conversation. It's like, well, did anybody buy her any toys? Did anybody, get her anything outside of the typical novelty? And my sister said, I got her one thing, but she opened it privately. She didn't want to open it in front of the in-laws and other people. And so I was like, all right, game on, because this is something that no one explained to us. When we got married, we were under the assumption of traditional sex. I'll just blanket it that way. Neither one of us had really good, I don't want to say examples, but there wasn't a whole lot of information given to us. A lot of the information we were given in growing up with sex ed was kind of like the basic mechanics and a few extras, and that was it. You and I didn't even discover toys until a few years back with our counseling with Rita. So I kind of took it personal, thinking she's getting married. She needs to know ahead of time these things are okay to explore. And she actually, when she opened it, she got excited, which I thought was great because these were things that she had never talked about or considered. So I knew I was going down the right path. But that, and then we had it lined up to talk to Dan and do the interview with him and the Intimately Us app that we were starting to use. And it dawned on me, it's like, we're going into expectations. We're talking about sexual expectations, but in the last few episodes, we just kind of gave you a basic kind of, these are your needs, these are her needs, and what to do about it. With sex, it's not just about your needs being met or her needs being met. There's a lot of other aspects to consider. And for Quincy and I, for a really long time, this was a difficult topic to discuss. And I don't know if it's just because it's taboo and we were both brought up in homes where you don't discuss these things. This is not, typical conversation around the dinner table. If I ever asked my mother about sex as a kid, it was always, don't do it. It's disgusting. It hurts. You don't want to know about it. And I know she was just trying to keep me from doing stupid stuff when I was a teenager. But even when I got married, the conversations were more about serving him, keeping him happy so that he doesn't go somewhere else to find it. I never considered until, well, I'm kind of a selfish person, so I do have the tendency to go, well, what about me? Where's my stuff in this? Thankfully, I have a very generous husband. I don't have to ask that question. Mm-hmm. But between the two of us, and you come from a family with multiple marriages, so there's a lot of difference in opinion there. And then we both come from the church background, and we had very different upbringings there. And the topics and the conversations were always kind of, at least in my experience, it was just a brushed topic. Like, you have sex when you're married, you have sex with your wife. Anything beyond that is a sin and you're going to hell, is the basic structure of what I was taught church-wise. Porn is bad. We don't go to sex toy stores. Lingerie and dressing as sexy puts you in the position for people to think that you're offering them sex. It makes you look like a whore, those kind of things. So all of this stuff was kind of in the back of our heads, I think. So we decided, in going into this particular series, these are things we need to discuss. These are things that you and your spouse need to discuss. And how do we do this without making it one of those hard talks, so to say? A hard talk for us, if you don't know or you're not familiar, is things that are difficult for you to discuss that might hurt the other person, or things that need to be discussed that might create an argument, so you have to engage that conversation. Sex could be one of those things, but it really shouldn't. Unless there's an epic problem or an infidelity or something of that nature, I could see where that could be a hard talk.
Yeah.
But for us, it's just always been uncomfortable, which is weird when you think about it, because you're my best friend in the world and you have my best interest at heart, and I have your best interest at heart, and our goal is to please each other. And yet both of us, I think, and if I'm wrong, you'll correct me, but for myself, I always thought about, I can just put my stuff on the back burner. This is stuff I'm interested in, but I don't know how it's going to go over. I had a lot of insecurities, a lot of fear of rejection, a lot of other things that played into why I didn't do or why I didn't say. And so making this series, we're going to kind of walk you through our journey and our process and how we've gotten over some of these things. And I will be straight up with you. We are still dealing with some of these things and learning how to communicate with each other about it. And it's not so much embarrassment, I don't think, as it's just awkward. You know, it's kind of weird to say, I think I want to try this. But you just don't know how the other person's going to take it. You don't know what to expect. It's not like when you know, like I already know if I don't do something that I said I was going to do and you're expecting it when you get home, I already know there's going to be a disappointment there. And then I still have to tell you, I didn't get it done today, right? There's a difference in knowing what's coming and throwing something out there and not sure what's going to come back at me. If I already know I did something to disappoint you, I expect the disappointment. If I'm throwing something out there and I have no idea what's coming back at me, it's difficult to say. I think that's fair for everybody, in all honesty.
I think it's just a fear of being rejected, and maybe you don't want to look a certain way to your spouse. And while you're talking, I'm just sitting here thinking, why didn't we talk more about sex before we got married? And why didn't we talk more about sex when we first got married?
Well, before we got married, we did talk about sex. We were in youth group, and everything that we talked about was not until you're married. Sex is between a man and a woman. It's something to consummate the marriage. It's an intimacy act. It is something that brings you closer together, and it brings you both pleasure. But no one ever actually talked about actual sex. So I think that's the part that.
So how do we? This is just a question for me, and I'll throw it out there. How do we give a better send off to our kids? Because I didn't really have the sex talk with my dad or my mom. You know, I had the talk when I may have got caught, once. And that was not cool. Not by my parents, but,
Ooh, you got caught by somebody else's parent. That ain't cool.
Yeah, in the middle of something pretty heavy.
Ooh.
With that being said, why weren't we talked to about it? And why weren't we discussing it more? I don't have an answer to that. And what I was, just listening to you talk, it's like, how much baggage did we really bring into our relationship because we had a certain point of view about me, how you felt about sex, you, how I felt about sex, and
then your own beliefs on how you wanted sex to be.
Yeah, truly what my expectations were, but we just didn't know then to discuss them. Even when we went to that pre-marriage class, the only thing I can really think of when it came to talking about sex was, this is how you tell your partner that, you can let your partner know in a subtle way.
Hang a towel on the door.
Or something like that.
Send a text message or leave a little love note, which those are all well and good. But
there were no text messages back then.
But that was just like, okay, that's just telling you that I want to have sex. But here's the thing. What do you mean when you say I want to have sex?
Yeah.
Are you talking about penetration and intercourse? Are you talking about oral sex? Are you talking about, is there foreplay involved in this? What are you expecting when you say I want to have sex? Nobody explained any of that to us. And so when you come into a marriage, it's like, okay, basics. You definitely need a little bit of foreplay because you got to get her heated into it. Otherwise, you're running dry. Then you need to get each other at least one orgasm out of the situation for each person. If you're lucky and you're nice. If you're more than nice, you'll give her more than one just to make sure everything works well. But then beyond that, it's like, okay, well, I touched first base, second base, third base, got a home run. She got off, I got off. We're done. But are you really? Are you satisfied? Are you satiated? Are you both like laying on the bed ready to have a cigarette and pass out? No. Why? Yeah. Because you didn't discuss somewhere along the line what having sex means to you. Yeah. So As far as the kids are concerned, let me just wipe that worry out of your head, because we have girls and they've all been instructed to come to me with those questions. And so far, they have asked me a lot of detailed things. I do not sugarcoat. I do not tell them whether or not they are things you and I do, but I do give them straight talk, because you need to know when a guy says this to you, this is what he's actually saying, so that they don't say, would you rather? And our kid says, sure, I'd rather do this. And you're going, no, honey, no. You just admitted that you would get a guy off. This is not no. So our girls are well informed and somewhat terrified. You're welcome.
Well, the thing I want to ask our audience is really like this. It's like, have you taken a second step back and look and think about all the baggage you brought in to your relationship as it relates to sex? And then if you haven't, how many unspoken expectations or thoughts do you have regarding sex? And does your partner know that? And have you all discussed it? Because I think that is extreme. I'm baffled at myself the more I think about it, how much we didn't talk through things.
No, we didn't. And once we got pregnant, we never went beyond that, which that'll come out later on down in the series, but that's something else to consider. You know, just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can't have sex. We had extenuating circumstances in some such situations, but there were other things we could have done. There were other things that could have kept that, because honestly, it's not just about having sex. It's about keeping that intimacy going and keeping that connection. But there are so many other things you can do, and a lot of people stop between penetration and oral. That's not the only two things you do in a sexual relationship. There's a lot of other avenues you can travel. But it's still one of those situations where I think what we saw is kind of what we went by. And, you know, I'm not knocking church by any means, but I do think that the fact that abstinence and sex in a marriage was basically all they taught us. Was it something you do with your spouse? And you need to stay away from it until then. And if you don't, these are the consequences. That was the extent of what we learned. So in bringing this series, first, we're going to ask you to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to ask you to consider, where did you get your beliefs and your thoughts about sex from? Was it your parents' marriage and what you saw? Some people had parents who there was adultery in the marriage. Some people had parents who were divorced, and you know, there were different. Maybe the first husband or your father, what have you, was a certain way with your mother, and now the second marriage was a totally different type of personality. This is a different man that you're seeing now. Were they, so you might have one person who is very rough and vulgar and rude or demanding, and one who's extremely sensitive and sweet and compassionate. I don't know. Everybody's different. Did you get it in a church? Were you ingrained and inundated with, do this, you go to hell? And how, like, for a lot of women in particular, and I'm speaking from experience, if I wore certain clothing, it was like, you're putting yourself out there. You're making yourself out to be a whore or a slut. You're advertising yourself. And it used to make me feel insecure about the body I'm in, just because if I do show this off, I don't want the wrong person doing something to me. And it created a fear I didn't need to have. It also created an insecurity in my body, because now that I can wear things, I'm not sure where to be comfortable with it. You know, I don't wear low-cut shirts, or I didn't for a really long time, because I had really big boobs before we had kids. But now, I don't mind wearing low-cut shirts, but the difference is I'm secure in my marriage. I'm secure in who you and I are. I don't care if somebody else looks at me. It's not yours. You know, it's like, it doesn't belong to you. You can look. I'm not giving you anything.
Yeah.
But before, I always felt like if I wore something, I was advertising that I was willing to give something. But it was a mindset that somebody had taught me.
Well, I'm an advocate for, teaching my girls modesty until they're adults. I want them to feel proud of how they look, and feel sexy, because that will give them confidence to feel comfortable in their skin. But at the same time, I believe in the modesty before being an adult policy.
Yeah,
I guess I could say.
I stuck to that until I was about 19.
Yeah.
I was 18 or 19 before I finally got comfortable in.
And I'll tell you, you're supermodel status in my opinion. Period. And to hear you say anything at all about being insecure with your body freaking blows my mind.
Well,
I mean,
you weren't in my previous relationship, so the head spins that other people created is not.
yeah, but the mirror is right there, and you see yourself naked, and it's like, that guy's just a freaking moron. Because I remember the first time I saw you naked, and it was like, I am so far out of my league as a chubby man, as an average man down below. I'm way far out of my league, supermodel status. And so to hear that, that you ever had any kind of insecurity or whatever, for me, it just blew my mind. I couldn't even imagine that.
But that's also the point. You don't really know where the beliefs or where the mindsets or where the insecurities come from until you actually get into these conversations.
And that's, let me butt in right there real quick and say, look, your wife, it's possible that your wife or even you might be the product of a previous relationship. That's where your mindset might be, because Jeannie had an ex-boyfriend. They dated for a while, and that fool told her that she was heavy or had gained some weight or something stupid like that. And I don't know. How heavy were you at the time?
115 pounds.
Yeah, you were 150. So he's a freaking moron. And if he ever listens to the show, you're a freaking moron, because you've got no wits. You had no wits or sense about you. I hope that you've changed in your relationship as well, and things are good for you now as you've moved on. I don't wish any ill will towards marriages unless you become an Auburn fan. Anyway, I just wanted to fit that in there because, I look at my wife. She's gorgeous, and I couldn't imagine the thought of a beautiful human being having any insecurity. Me, on the other hand, was heavy for the majority of my life, and, big belly, moobs, chunky legs, no butt, flat feet. What else can I do here? And, like I say, I'm not Hulk below the belt. So it's like, what am I supposed to do? I look in the mirror and I'm just not pleased. I've, worked on getting healthier, and now it's just as bad because I have loose skin or whatnot. So when it comes to me and looking and feeling sexy with the clothes off, no. With some clothes on, yeah. But for what that's worth, I just wanted to butt in and say that. Guys, how would you like the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with me, the Q Dog, and my wife, Jeannie? That's right, a 30-minute Zoom meeting you can have if you go over to manvsmarriagepodcast.com, become a subscriber. That will enter your name in for a chance to win this exciting contest. Now listen, if you got a homeboy who listens, or maybe he doesn't listen, send him over to manvsmarriagepodcast.com, have him become a subscriber, and that will enter him to win. Then he sends me an email at coach@manvsmarriagepodcast.com, and guess what? That will enter you another time. There is no limit to how many times you can be entered, so go there now to manvsmarriagepodcast.com, become a subscriber, have your friends do the same, and alert me via email, and you could win the MVSM meet and greet via Zoom with Quincy and Jeannie from Man vs. Marriage, the podcast. That's right. I'll see you there. Go get it done. Don't be a slacker. Get to work. Q-Dog is out.
Well, I think the first thing you guys need to do, like I said, is you need to figure out where your beliefs come from, what your mindsets are, what you guys feel about certain things. What did you learn about it, and where are you with it now? Because I'll be honest, when I was younger, prior to marriage, I was taught that oral sex was predominantly for him. It was a service act. It was something that all men wanted. That's all that they wanted. And if you ever gave them that, you were screwed, because that was the leverage they held over you, because that was a whore act.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Like I said, it wasn't all my mom. I had other influences talking to me. I have an older sister. She had friends. I had a lot of conversations with people around me, or hearing my dad talk to his buddies, and the way that they would discuss their wives and the lack of sex, or how they did this wrong, or they wish they do that, or, did you see this woman? And I heard she does this. It's like, it just gave me a funky way of looking at things, because I didn't want to be that person that the guys are talking about. I don't want to be listening to my husband tell his friends how he doesn't get it enough. I don't want to be made fun of, which had happened in the past, where oral sex was an issue in a previous relationship. And honestly, there's really not a way to be really super bad at this. It's kind of basics. You could be horrible, but I don't really think that any guy's really stupid enough to be like, that sucked, pun intended. But, it was a mental stigma. You and I had to get through some of that stuff. Now, I know friends of mine, women that I've talked to, and they're on their second marriage. They never had oral sex until their second marriage, period.
Yeah.
Because it made them feel awkward, or the person they were with thought it was a disgusting thing and you weren't supposed to do it. And it's like, okay, these are conversations that need to be had. Because if you don't talk that out, if you wanted to do that with me and I just went, and stopped you, that could mentally stunt you or put a wedge there, because you don't know why I did that. If you're not careful and you're not having these conversations, you could hurt somebody you've never intended to hurt, and you could hurt them badly.
Yeah.
Quincy and I have been married for years. We've had epic fails in the bedroom, like everybody has. You have moments and it's like, wow, okay, that did not go the way we thought it would, and somebody gets hurt. Or that, you
We're
shut
not talking
down.
about physically hurt, so to speak. We're talking about emotionally.
No, I'm just saying, maybe one of you initiates and it's not the time to initiate, and the other one just shuts you down, and they shut you down hard. That makes you gun shy to initiate again.
Yes, it really does.
There are times when, maybe you're not looking for actual sex. You just need an oral orgasm. It's okay to say, this is what I need. But I think because it's taught in our heads, we start thinking, that's all I'm good for. I will... Quincy and I had one of those situations come up recently where he came in and said he would stay awake for a blowjob. And honestly, we say this stuff all the time. We joke, we banter, I will come straight out and tell him, I want you to do this. It's not hidden with us anymore in that aspect. But for whatever reason, that night it pissed me off, because you can't stay awake the rest of the week for everything else, but you'll stay awake for that. I didn't say anything. I internalized it, and then immediately I was pissed at myself, because why did that bother me so badly? Why would you saying something which we joke about all the time, why would it piss me off? It doesn't make sense. And it took me a couple of days while going through preparing the series and thinking about it. It was because our sex life lately has become routine, and some of the needs that I had were not being met, but I didn't register that it wasn't being met, because we were still having sex. So everything's good, right? But once it clicked, it's like, oh crap, now I have to have this conversation. Now I have to tell you why this happened. And then we got to figure out how to fix it. And I don't know what's needed to fix it. I just know something's not right. And then coming out in the conversation, he said the same thing. You know what? I had noticed that this has become a routine. I'd noticed we were doing the same thing, and I thought, maybe we needed to do something, but I don't know. For some reason, we just didn't change anything yet. Okay, well, we've changed things. We're back on track. But having that conversation, we would have just kept on going, and eventually that frustration would have turned into a resentment, and it would have turned into a wall between us. And you can definitely tell if you are connected to your spouse and your sex life is on point and you guys have a good intimate relationship, you can tell when anything is off
Yeah.
when you're trying to engage or you're having sex. And it doesn't mean you're not having it, but you definitely know that something is not clicking like it usually does. And the question is, do you say something and chance not getting any and ruining the mood? Or do you wait it out and then say something? That's between y'all. Everybody does their thing different. Our conversation happened 2-3 days later. And when the conversation finally came out, it's like, dude, that was really stupid. I should have said something. I don't know why I didn't say something.
Well, I knew there were like 2 encounters that we had where, we both went all the way. I don't know what to say, climax, orgasm, whatever. But I
Those
knew,
work.
Yep. But I knew even though, we both achieved the mission, that's kind of what it was the mission of just having orgasms. And it's like, that connection wasn't there. Because there's a connection, that's there.
Yeah, the passion wasn't there.
The intimacy connection wasn't there. And fortunately, when you have these awkward talks, they shouldn't be awkward by this point, but even for us, they are. We have umpteen episodes on sex, but it still gets awkward. But we were able to come down to we were able to get to the point of, oh yeah, you couple of idiots. This is why things are getting mechanical. And we, as in times past, not just around sex, but our relationship in general, there are telltale signs. There's a tell. And we just keep moving around and doing our thing. And it's like, oh, crap. Well, this is the time of year. Oh, crap. We're not doing this because of this. And, oh, we used to get, these once a week or once a month things. And it's like, so, yeah, you stop doing the very things that facilitate the environment of intimacy in your relationship, and then you're just having sex.
Mm-hmm.
And when the connection, it was 2 times, I was like, maybe the first time, maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. And then the next time, it's like, okay, something's off. Something's off. Even though we're getting there, something is off. So I didn't even know how to bring it up, or, still awkward for me, which we got to figure that out. But then you bringing this up, it's like, yeah, we're kind of already thinking the same thing. So we got to figure this thing out. And that's where the talk and the discussion came. And it's so weird how life tends to provide us what we need to talk about in our relationship while we're preparing for that content in the podcast.
Right.
It's just so weird.
Well, and this is, like I said, this is a taboo topic for a lot of people. For Quincy and I, this is one of those subjects that we have to kind of ease into the conversation. Now, some people, we have friends that we talk to, and they're very open in their conversation about sex, and they don't care if you're around and you hear them talking about it. But
let's say this. You do. Because I don't. I mean, I got some tight bros, but we just don't talk about our sex lives.
Okay, so here's something you need to know, guys. That she might not be talking to you, but she is talking to somebody. Because let me tell you, the women in certain groups that I talk with, they are very open to ask questions. And hey, how do I bring this up? Have you tried this? My husband and I did this the other day. Have you ever tried this? This is where you find this at. This is the link to buy this. You don't think they're talking about it because she's not talking to you. Oh, we're talking. We are talking. But
I had no idea.
But here's the thing. I'm finding out based on these conversations with women around me that they're the ones going out and buying the toys. They're the ones going out and finding new things. Their guys aren't engaging until the wife says something. I have a problem with this. Now, I don't mind buying the toys. I don't mind going shopping. I am finally at the point where I can walk into an adult store, and I really don't care if you see me walk into an adult store. It used to be when we first got married, I could not go into an adult store. Number one, I'm not going anywhere in my town. If anybody sees me going into the store and I am Quincy's wife, you can't miss me. I always have rainbow hair or colored hair or something, tattoos. People just spot me.
You do now. I mean, back then you had that blonde hair, that long, beautiful blonde hair.
But it's still one of those, if somebody who knew us saw me going in there and they know you, I was mortified. So I wouldn't do it. Thank you, Amazon. You have saved my life. But now I don't have a problem doing that. But I'm also the one that comes back now and it's like, I went to the store. Look what I got. I didn't used to do that. But I think what bothered me was like a couple of the women said when their husband brings something home, it's like a bullet vibrator or a porn movie or something to that effect. But they never had this conversation. So he's kind of shooting in the dark and, you know, overheard a conversation, or maybe he saw something in one of her books or whatever, and he brings it home. Talk about it.
Yeah.
If you find out, dude, we all have an inner freak, whether we say it out loud or not. We all have things that we like or we want to try or that interest us. But we are hindered in these areas of conversation. Now, some people aren't. Some people are very open about it. But I find a lot of people that are extremely open about their experimentation or using toys or whatever it is. In my little circle that we talk to, they are not very confident or don't have the intimacy level down. It's like, we're great at sex. We suck at conversation. We can't plan dates. We can plan an epic sex weekend. But our date nights are like going to dinner and a movie, and that's where it stops. There's no imagination beyond that. So I'm not saying everyone has this issue. Everyone has an area where they have this issue, where something is difficult to discuss.
Yeah.
For Quincy and I, it happens to be money and sex. These are the two places that we have the most difficulty, I think.
I don't know, man. I think over the course
better
of the
at
last couple years, we're way better at talking about sex than money.
Oh, we're better at it, but I'm just saying for us, this was the two areas that were the hardest for us to get on the same page and be okay discussing it and not turn 15 shades of red because we're saying something to each other.
50 Shades of Red.
15. I didn't say 50.
I know, but I was just thinking 50 Shades of Red.
There goes that thing again. But, okay, so the first thing I want you guys to do before going into the rest of this series, consider how you learned about sex and sexuality. Now, don't get stuck on the word sexuality. I am not talking about the social aspect of sexuality and gender change and all this. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is your sexuality, as in your capability of having sexual feelings and sexual activity, and how you feel about your own sensuality, how you feel about your own sex life, and the conversations that surround it. Do not get hung up on the word, okay? The other part of that is I want you to have a conversation with your spouse once you figured out where you're at. Was it church? Was it school? Was it books? Were you a hidden stack of Playboys and porn movies kid? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. There are girls who have hidden stacks of books too. I'm just saying.
Really?
I learned about romance novels at about 14 years old. So I'm trying to get you to look at how you think about sex, how you were taught about sex. Are there areas that maybe you've considered you'd like to try, or things you've thought about that maybe you want to experiment with, or things that you want to know about her? Maybe she's got some hidden fantasies you know nothing about, but you haven't asked. I don't know why you wouldn't ask, but you've got to have a reason. My reasons were basic. I was scared to death that I was going to get rejected because the upbringing that Quincy and I had was very, very strict on the religious scale. So I assumed that meant you were going to be like the missionary guy, and this is how things were going to go. I was wrong, but I'm just saying that's kind of, I mean, I was afraid to buy lingerie. I had the lingerie I got for my bridal shower, and then once I had worn everything, I didn't really wear lingerie after that. I thought about that the other day. I'm like, I had a whole drawer full of lingerie. I think I wore it the first year we were married, and then I didn't put it back on unless we had like an anniversary or a huge getaway. But I didn't really do anything else. And I was still hung up on my body and what it meant and what it made me feel. I didn't feel comfortable in it, but I wanted to wear it. I just didn't know. It took us going to a marriage conference and the pastor standing up, and the very first thing he hits us with is, ladies, for the love of everything holy, get some lingerie. Change it up in the bedroom. And I'm sitting there thinking, I just got permission from the pastor to wear naughty stuff in my own bedroom. I like this idea.
You really just had to give yourself permission for that, because I didn't, I mean, when we did that Jack Hayford deal, pre-marriage class, which I thought was a great idea, and we were young and naive, I really believe. The message or the content was sex only happens face to face. When I heard that, I was like, nah, not buying into that one, old Jackie boy. Now
There
that's
is a whole lot of other places you can go, but I'm just saying.
yeah, that's disrespectful to say about Jack Hayford, I guess. But I'm cool if that's the planet you live on for your marriage. But for me, I was like, no, that doesn't work. But I never told you that.
Uh-huh.
I never opened up to you about that. Sex procreation, yes, it's a really fun way to procreate. But we just didn't talk about those things. It blows my mind still. I don't understand why we didn't. And guys, if you're listening, or the gals that are listening, maybe y'all did, and you're not married to me, so you don't have a dope that you're married to, and you were wise enough to do it. But if you didn't, now's a great time to start discussing that. And if your wife is like my wife, she just, can't bring herself to listen to podcasts, but I would recommend this series to ask your spouse to listen to it, because it's going to make this conversation easier. You can hear from us what we did, the mistakes that we made, my fails, her fails, and it'll just help break the ice when it comes to talking about sex.
Let us be the conversation starter.
Yeah. Remember when Quincy did this? Well, this made me think about that, and it will be a place where y'all can mutually meet.
Or pause the podcast and go, no, okay, hold on. Because we've done that. We've been watching Kim Imani or listening to Kim Imani, and we'll pause it. Okay, wait, stop.
Yeah.
I heard this. What did you hear? Because that didn't. Okay. Did you hear what I heard? Because this is really awkward. But it opens the conversation without us having to go, we need to have a talk.
Yeah. And when you get into these conversations, if it's anything like ours, you'll find yourself going, I didn't know you thought that way.
Oh my gosh, the last 2 weeks have been a whole plethora of those conversations of us
Yeah.
going, what?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Yeah. Or me thinking, when she's telling me how she thought I was thinking, was like, that freaking thought never crossed my mind. I didn't have...
Quincy has a what the hell face. You might not have seen it, but I recognize it. So when I tell him something and you look over and he gets this look on his face, it's like, oh, that was a what the hell moment. I was wrong. I was really wrong.
Yeah. So you're bound to discover some things. And when you're talking about this, I mean, Jeannie and I we've drawn a line in the sand, and really it's not just a line in the sand. We've painted a permanent boundary when it comes to sex in our life, and that boundary is we're not gonna bring anybody else into our sexual relationship. It's her and I. We don't go the threesome route. That's not something we're interested in. Other than that, we've given each other the permission to say, okay, I want to try this. What do you think? And then kind of you cringe and go, ooh. I don't know. There's just still things that I've had difficulty talking about because it's awkward and there is some residue of rejection there. that we have to
Well,
work
and
through.
I think part of it too, like I said, it's what we've been around. For me, there's a lot of stigma because of the way that my father used to talk about my mother in the presence of other men, not realizing your daughter, being a child or a young adult, is hearing all of these things. And then, having our own relationships in our adolescence and having those similar behaviors. I dated jocks. Jocks talk, and when they talk, they're stupid. I'm sorry. No offense to you,
I'm a
but
jock and I didn't talk.
you told me some things. But anyway, some of the conversations that I was around, I didn't want to be talked about like that. So it made me not want to do certain things or act a certain way because I didn't want to be talked like that,
Yeah.
especially by my husband.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying you need to have these conversations. What did you see? What did you learn? What do you think about it? What do you feel about it? What are your limitations? And, get that all out first. And then as we go through the series, we'll tell you how to get into the other stuff.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent way to wrap this up. You got a recap from Jeannie on what to do, and a couple pointers from me on how to bring this up or how to think about this, and have your wife, jump into listening as best you can. Just offer it out there. Ask her to go for a drive. Y'all listen to it together. Buy her some, a soda, an ice cream, or whatever if you dabble in sugar. Quincy's the anti-sugar guy, carnivore man. But make it a drive and see how it turns out. Other than that, this is number one when it comes to sex, and we are going to have a whole series on this to help you increase your intimacy. What do you think about that? All right. She's Gina Moran. I am Quincy Moran, a.k.a. the Q-Dog, and this is Man vs. Marriage.
The podcast. How good do you want your life to be?
You gotta live on purpose, for a purpose.
It's truly about becoming the best version of yourself that's possible. This is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.